everybody. It's Heather with the Leadership the Heart podcast. And today I am thrilled to have Nick Lopez on with me. He actually, normally people, I either find them, I'm either hand picking him, I'm scouring and I'm finding somebody refers somebody to me, or occasionally somebody will reach out and say, I have this gentleman, this woman, I have someone who I think would be good. And I read his story, the story of his company and just his whole mission and the focus. And I thought, ooh, that's complete alignment with what it is we do here at Employee Fanatics and of course on the Leadership of the Heart podcast. So welcome, Nick. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm humbled.
It's exciting. I hopefully the people are listening. They'll actually go over to the YouTube as well and check out this beautiful background you have on Get Limed and love, integrity, mission, and excellence as the focus of your company. It just really does those things completely meld with Leadership of the Heart, with caring leadership. And I am curious. So let's tell them what this is. Where are you right now in your leadership journey?
I'm continuing to learn and level up. Yeah. I am currently the founder of a national franchise company. We actually just awarded are hopefully about to be awarding our 49th and 50th locations, which is a big milestone. Just a year ago, in August 2020, we had 7 locations.
That's some serious growth there, Nick.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yep, just working to level up and help others level up.
Oh, I love that a lot. I love it. So I'm curious to know the folks that either whether it's the franchisees or those on kind of like the corporate team, how they see you, or like how would they describe you as a leader?
That's a good question. I would say accessible.
Nice. That's a good one. That's definitely a caring leadership type of behavior, to be accessible to people when they need you. And I'd imagine that's so dang critical. I interviewed and have someone in my book, Chuck Runyon from Self-Esteem Brands, which is Anytime Fitness. And he talked about that and, the listening and being accessible. And that's so important when you're in this building phase of what you're doing. And so tell us more about what you do at Lime. It's Lime, right?
Yep. Lime painting. So lime like the fruit. We focus specifically on custom properties, whether it's commercial or residential, and we do the painting for those properties. And being that they're custom properties, we do a lot more than just paint. We do coatings and surface restoration as well. So, over 40 different services we offer, and we're actually the first and only high-end paint company nationally.
Oh, wow. And I love that lime color. So now I'm like, now you're making me think. We're about to finish our basement. And I'm like, ooh, I think my studio might be that color. I really like that. It's like, it just really brings things to life. That's just so awesome. Now I'm curious to know, a painting company. I don't think I've ever seen a painting company that has like that mission focus. I want to go a little deeper on that. So this love, integrity, mission, excellence. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. I was, building a successful company and wanted to make sure that I was intentional about how I did that. And, clearly I'm leveling up and helping others level up. It's one thing to only be leveling up. It's, it's also, how are we leveling up? And so I wanted to define, okay, well, what is the Lime way? Right. So, and that is love, integrity, mission, excellence. That is, those are our values, and it's a big part of our vetting process and how we build our team and the culture at Lime.
How does that actually, I'm curious to know, how do you kind of enforce that with the franchise units? How do you enforce that at the corporate level as you're kind of almost like having a scorecard to kind of gauge whether you're living up to that big, bold statement of values?
Yeah, I think it starts with, leadership, right? And people on people, and how we're intentional with serving each other and showing up for one another. It's how are we showing up for each other? And if we can just do it, person by person within our company and be intentional about how we show up through those values, then that focus on people as opposed to a focus on profits and numbers, in the relationship behind the people at Lime makes a difference.
Yeah, it really does. I think any organization that makes this as a strategy is going to win all day. And I think what happens often is most organizations are starting from a different place, maybe not the right place, not properly, calibrated, and then they realize afterward that that focus on people is a better strategy, and so they have to like kind of pivot that and change an entire ocean of things, right? When in fact, if you start from that place, it just makes it a lot easier, because then you can say like, these are the 4 values, like these are it. So then every decision you make should align with those. And if anything knocks up against it, it should be a no, right? It's just that simple. I think some people are like, well, it's not that simple. Well, actually it is that simple. It is that simple if we start from there. And I think that's what's interesting. So I'm curious to know if you ever just, as the founder of this company that's scaling like this, do you ever find like that it's hard sometimes, where the line is hard, or like the road is hard, where you're like, well, love, integrity, like this thing that's here, like there's an opportunity here, we could really do this thing, but is it congruent with excellence or whatever it is? Have you ever had any of that?
Yeah, I mean, we could be growing faster.
You're growing pretty fast. 7 to 49.50. Wow. I mean, that's crazy.
We could be growing faster, and we're doing a good job of being intentional with the people that we partner with, and them fitting our values and the teams that they're building as well.
So I'm curious to know, like, is there a time when, as you thought about this as the foundation of the company, and to start with people first as a strategy, which in the relationships that are there first, to be successful and to be able to create and continue to scale this company. Has there ever been a time with you as the leader of this, and where you feel like maybe you weren't the best leader as it relates to your values, your core values? I'm sure these are probably your core values as well. It's probably how you came up with these. So have you felt like you've actually ever knocked up against that? And if you did, can you share like that story, specifically? And what did that look like for you after you realized, wait a second, this is not congruent with love, integrity, mission, excellence?
Sure. So, I knew I wanted to franchise pretty early on. It was about 10 years ago now. And I started painting in college. It was a way to pay for school. I did it for 5 years in college, and about midway through, I was given a book called E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. And in that book, it introduced me to systems and process and duplicating, and ultimately, working on your business, not in it, and scaling through franchising. But I really fell in love with this idea of being in business with other business owners. Right. And that's pretty unique, especially when I first learned about franchising. That concept to me was pretty profound. So I really just fell in love with this idea of franchising. And so then from that point forward is about creating the systems and the process, and spending the time in college working, in the business so I could work on it while learning my business and sales degrees and applying it in the field, getting direct feedback, and then moving back home to Denver from East Lansing, where I went to college, Michigan State, and launching Lime Painting about 7 years ago now, 8 years ago, and back in 2014. And so launched the company, and those first 4 years are about proving out the unit economics, grew it to a couple $1 million location, and it felt like, okay, yeah, we had built this business model that not only did painting, but offered 40 different services for this niche, and, really systematized it, and, in conjunction with the technology and the training, everything that goes into working on the business. Well, now we're looking at franchising and being able to scale there. Well, that's an entirely different business than the business that I was in, working on these custom properties as a painter, right? And a coatings guy. So now I need to learn franchising, make sure I'm doing franchising the right way. Well, as I was at that crossroads to make that decision, I really struggled with, not just doing what I had already done a couple times in Denver, which was grow to this $2 million business. And, in my early 20s, was, pretty successful. I could have done it a couple more times. And, again, I was working on the business, not in it. So it was running itself and pretty much. And, a great team in place that was clearly just doing a great job, all the great fits. And, now it's a decision to start franchising, right? So those first 4 years were about proving out the unit economics. But what I had seen in those first 4 years was how the sales process really was a platform for the sales guys and how they executed on it and changed their life. Same thing with our painters, and had watched how multiple painters, started and ran successful paint companies by partnering with our company. And it's seen how, okay, well, this business model, which is requiring at the time, 5-10 hours of my time per week, generating what it's generating. Okay, well, this can also be a platform for business owners as well. And that's always been the plan. And so I found myself really struggling with that crossroad. And, ultimately I felt like I was being selfish and in not opening up that platform and sharing it, right? And so also in addition to that, really just realizing that there's a way to go about how do we share this platform, right? And that's when the values were born, right? Love, integrity, mission, excellence. I actually was working with a client in the Pinehurst Country Club here in Denver, and he had grown and scaled a moving company. And he said, Nick, I know you're a very, you're a values-led guy, and clearly that's why I've worked with you. And what we did with our moving companies, we had those values right on our T-shirts. Everyone knew what we stood for. There was no question, right? So when the movers were wearing our T-shirts, they knew how to show up, and we all knew how to show up for each other. And I really took that to heart, and I knew that was great advice. So it was our values coming to life, in love, integrity, mission, excellence. So okay, well, yeah, we can create success stories, right? The business can create success, but how do we want to shepherd and steward that success? Again, the how, and how do we want to show up for one another?
I love that a lot. So much. Yeah. I mean, it's the level of intentionality that went into that. I could just see how you can walk through that. And by the way, I wrote that book down because I'm there in my business I went from a solopreneur to an entrepreneur during the pandemic. And now I'm, this whole idea of like scaling and making it independent for me. So I'm kind of going through that same thing. So thanks for giving us that book. So just for you who it could be similarly situated, it's called The E-Myth. It says E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. I love that. I love picking up books from other very smart people like you. Okay, so now's a time in the show where you ask me a question. Is there something so I am like known as the employee whisperer. I'm a caring leadership person, and the podcast host of Leadership with Heart. What question might you have for me to answer?
Well, things are changing, right? Employees are wanting different opportunities and work-life balance. What do you see as the future of what retaining employees? What do you think it looks like?
Yeah.
What is the next version of being an employer in a place where people thrive and feel fulfilled? And because there's some changes, right? There's some changes that are going on there, and I definitely think it's a good. I would love your perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So here's what I would say. And I would say that the thing I'm going to say is kind of timeless, so that even though like the work environment might change physically, people might want to be at home, they might be on the beach, they want to be wherever they want to be, right? What happened during the pandemic is that your team members' vision of what was possible, what they want for themselves, their family, drastically changed. It's not even just the workplace. It's just overarchingly, we realized we wanted more we didn't have the connection. We missed the connection. We wanted more connection because we were shut down. We couldn't have it. We realized we could do more without actually having to be in a physical workspace. And in your case, they're all over the place. They're not necessarily in a physical workspace unless they're in the headquarters. But thinking about, for their minds, they're like, oh, I know now that I don't need the thing I thought I needed. Oh, so their vision changed themselves. And so the organizations that follow along and dig deep to listen to their team members and figure out what the new vision is, and then look at their strategy and align that strategy with what their team members' new vision is for themselves, are going to be the ones who win all day. So listening is going to be critical, even more critical than it already was. Listening, and then being flexible to change the current strategy to say, how do we then align it? Because here's the thing, the team members and the customers, so customers and employees are the ones that drive the business forward. You know this because you have a strategy on people first, but it's knowing that, okay, I have this strategy, but who actually sees this through? Who serves all of those franchisees? Who gets them all going, right? It's the people behind the scenes that are making all that work. Okay, so what is their new vision? What is their vision for themselves? And once you get to the bottom of what their new vision is, and you figure out, okay, you meaning all leaders, figure out what steps can we do to gather that, to corral that, and to turn it into some kind of long-term strategy, are going to be the ones who win. So that's what I would say as we're looking forward. Dig deeper on the listening, dig deeper on the flexibility, and openness to change yourself. And I think, you'll be doing just fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. It sounds like it's mental, right? I mean, what you're saying is listen and cast vision.
Well, cast vision as it relates to what you heard, because the problem is we think we're like, oh, we brought on those people and this is what they wanted when we brought them in. But then this last 18.5 months, our vision has, in many cases, almost all of us, our vision just completely changed. Completely. Yeah. So now it's like, oh, so now you got to go back and have your team leads and your managers go back and get to know the people they thought they knew a year and a half ago, because they don't know that same person, because that person has now changed their vision for themselves and their families. So now you got to go and say, how do we recalibrate now our vision to make sure that it's in line with their vision? How do we do that? And you can't do that without digging deep, doing listening sessions, listening tours, maybe surveys, whatever it is you got to do, interviews, to make sure that you're getting now to their new truth, because their truth has changed. It's changed, and we got to change with it.
Yeah. We were growing all throughout it. So I think we have a little bit of the new age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It wasn't like we had a prior and then now a post.
Yes.
We were actually a company that was really born from a scaling standpoint.
Yes.
During the pandemic.
I think listening is still going to be your way. So I think the key here is like
communicating, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying, is communicating, right? And
back and forth. It's bi-directional. So it's the input, it's the output, it's the input, it's the output. And I think people think of communication as maybe one way or listening as one way, but it's a bi-directional thing. It's a cycle that never ends. And the more that you do that, the more any organization does that, they're going to be successful. They just will be much more, versus being full of assumptions. Because that's kind of the status quo, right?
Yeah, so much wisdom in that, just the organizational psychology, right? The tribes that make up the tribes that make up at the beginning of the conversation, you say, how do you implement love, integrity, mission, excellence? How do you ensure that scales with the company?
Yep. How do you gauge it? How do you do it? Is it in your performance reviews? Is it in your, what is it in? It should be seething through line paintings pores, right?
Yeah.
And so if it's doing that, then you're doing a good job. And that means also you're holding people accountable to those. So when they go off course, and you're course correcting with love, because love is a part of that, right? And so I think, those are just the things, organizations that are, have that strong mission, but then also recalibrate based upon what the needs of their people are. The changing needs are going to be the ones that just are going to win, period.
Yeah. And if you're an organization that has values like love, integrity, mission, excellence, how are you consistently communicating those values and creating those channels for your team to communicate those values to one another?
Demonstrating it to the end user. Demonstrate, because for you got the end user, the high-end purchaser of the line painting services, and then the franchisees and all those things, right? So you got multiple customers, multiple audiences that you have to figure out how that all aligns and how you're empowering them to meet that's really strong value statement. So it's a lot that goes into it. It is, I think, you're very strategic. So you're I'm sure it'll be just fine. But there are lots that aren't thinking about how it connects all from front to back. And it is critical if you want to be successful in that. So thanks for asking.
Yeah.
So I'm curious,
Yeah.
for those who are listening now, what might be a couple pearls of wisdom you'd leave them with? If they're either, they could be entrepreneurs, they could be leaders of big business, they could be just teams of one or two, it doesn't matter. But what might be a couple pearls of wisdom you leave them with to get them through the week, the month, the year, going into new year? What might be those pearls?
I would say just show up, right? It's amazing what happens when you just show up, and it's so hard just to show up. And to show up consistently, right? So that's what you're talking about, right? So showing up even on days when it's hard, right? So if you can show up on a day where it's more difficult to show up, you still showed up, right? And that's consistency. And if you can do that over a long period of time, if you can stack that on weeks, on months, right? Showing up, being intentional about knowing yourself and how am I feeling today? Not every day is a rock star day, right? And some days you just feel up and you wake up and everything just feels right, right? And those days, what are you doing to show up on those days? How are you showing up those days? Because some of the things you need to do, you can really win if you show up in that way when everything is clicking right, versus, okay, if it's not clicking today, but I just knock out some admin, but I showed up and I applied my skills in a different way, right? Knowing yourself, how you're showing up that day, but still showing up consistently, just showing up. Yeah, it's simple, but it's pretty profound.
Yeah, that's a really big pearl. I like big pearls. See, I love that. No pun intended. I'm wearing a pearl necklace. I love that though. I tell people that a lot because those people say, gosh, how did you get so successful? How'd you this and this and this and that? I'm like, well, that would be because I have consistently done this, this, and this for the last 8 years. But it's just, right. And it's like, well, there's no magic tool. That's what it is. So I appreciate that simplicity, but the power and consistency.
And the compounding that starts to happen at year 8, 9, 10, right? And all of a sudden it's like overnight. Well, no, actually, no,
it's not.
It's
but it feels like, even like we were in it, we're like, whoa, this feels like overnight, but it wasn't. It wasn't overnight. That's so powerful. Oh man, thanks, Nick.
Yeah.
For those who are listening right now, if you found as much value in this conversation as I have, I'm so glad I said yes to the person who told me to talk to you. If you found value, please do go share this far and wide, because we're moving up the list, management podcast, leadership podcast, and I think there's something special here. So keep referring it, and don't forget to go to Apple Podcast or wherever you listen, and make sure you write a review, because that's another way we continue to move up in the algorithms, so that more and more people find leadership with heart. We need them to find leadership with heart. We need them to understand this idea of core values and living into the mission and all of these things. So this has been awesome. Well, you just gave me a little bit of energy today, Nick, so I appreciate you.
Let's go. Yeah, let's level up.
Love it. Thanks everybody for joining the Leadership with Heart podcast. Be well.